decade, Saturdays and Illegal Curve have been synonymous with one another. With insight, analysis, and interviews regarding the Winnipeg Jets, the Manitoba Moose, and all around the NHL, here are Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg, and your host, Drew Mindell. The Illegal Curve Hockey Show starts now.
Good morning, Winnipeg. Good morning, Manitoba. For all those joining us live this morning on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms, we say good morning, universe, and welcome to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Mere hours after the post-game show ended, the hockey show starts now with Dave Minuk, with Ezra Ginsburg. I'm your host, Drew Mindell, here for the next couple of hours talking all to do with the Winnipeg Jets. We look back at the two-game road trip, the successful road trip that it was, and we'll get you set for tomorrow as the Washington Capitals come to town along with Vegas on Tuesday, and then the first appearance of the Nashville Predators on Thursday. A busy week for the Winnipeg Jets. We'll get you caught up to it and up to speed today on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Gentlemen, good to see you both. How was your sleepover? You know, a little cuddling, a little bit of a breakfast that Dave M whipped up for you this morning. How's everything in your boys' worlds?
Yeah, absolutely loved my egg white omelet this morning. Thanks again, Dave. But I'm just glad that we invested in those bunk beds because, I mean, it was really awkward, you know, when I had to sleep right beside Dave in his California King bed. So I'm just really happy that we got those bunk beds. So it was a good little sleepover. We talked about what girls we liked. So it was very nice. And, you know, it was nice to have, 8 or 9 hours off. But it's good to get back to the hockey talk.
Yeah, you'd missed it. I understand that completely. You know, who needs sleep? Sleep is for the weak, right, Dave M?
It is for the week. And while Ezzy was snoring away, Dave M was working away, of course, on a little site called LegalCurve.com, making sure that folks had the game recap up and up to date. And, of course, had the morning papers ready to go for you this morning at 7, like you would expect from me. So while Ez was sleeping, I was working while watching YouTube, coincidentally, because there's absolutely no movies to watch. So I was trying to find something on Netflix. I couldn't. There's obviously
the problem is, Dave, you binge watched Harry and Meghan the first day it came out, so you have nothing to watch now.
No, all I end up doing is watching the movie That's My Boy, which is I could repeat every single line from because I've probably seen it 10,000 times at this point.
Well, how was Harry and Meghan?
He's my boy.
It's a beautiful film.
It was beautiful.
It's not a movie, it's a film, Dave, right?
No,
you can't call it a movie, it's a film.
Okay, well, good to know. We'll keep the Netflix recommendations for after. We do have a night off tonight, so you can maybe spend some quality time with your significant others and curl up and watch some of that TV sort of thing. Let's get into the Winnipeg Jets conversations because that's why we're all here. Good morning to everybody in the chat. Good morning to everybody who's joining us on all the different social media platforms. We appreciate you joining us here on this Saturday morning. The Winnipeg Jets, I mean, the good times just keep on rolling, and 18-7-1. We talked about it extensively last night. This is a team playing with the utmost of confidence, a team that we've, elevated, in the course of our conversations. Not that we have to elevate them, but the tenor around the team is one of an elite hockey team. And we talked about extensively on yesterday's post-game show because, at this point in time, 26 games into the season, they're not a mirage anymore. I don't believe that this is 9-3-3 like last year where another shoe is about to drop. I don't get that feeling. I don't see any evidence to that effect. It's a larger sample size than 15 games was last year. It's almost, getting close to twice that sample size, and the team continues to perform at that high level, no matter what metric you want to look at. You want to look at straight normal points. Well, they're, second in the Western Conference in points with 37. You want to look at points percentage? Well, they're tops in the league in points percentage, or tops in the Western Conference in points percentage. The goal differential, this is one that usually is a good sign or that people put a fair degree of stock into to see actually how good a team is. Well, the Jets' goal differential now is tops in the Western Conference, tied with the Dallas Stars at plus 23. Any which way you cut it, this team is playing at a level that we haven't seen since 17-18. I think everybody is reveling in that. Certainly the guys in the dressing room. You saw probably Rick Bonus's post-game comments in the dressing room that the team tweeted out last night to the players themselves, and the fans, certainly all you good folks in the chat that seem to be reveling in it. So times are good right now for the Winnipeg Jets and their respective fans, Eddie.
Yeah, absolutely. We talked about it, right? Like Vegas is the only team that's above them in terms of points. And I think the Jets still have the edge when it comes to points percentage, or if they're not ahead of Vegas, they do. So there you go. Yeah. Points percentage is key, right? That's you could argue that actually puts them first. They obviously have to take advantage of the game or two. I forget if they have 2 games in hand or
3 in hand on Vegas.
Oh, you got 3 in hand. So I mean, there is a really good chance that they will pick up some of those points and either tie or pass them. But I still go. But you mentioned elite, and the Jets' record right now, which is what is it, 18-7-1 right now? I believe there's been so many games that I think
18-7-1. You're right.
There you go. So I mean, that's a really incredible record, and we've been covering all the games on the post-game show, and I still go back to when we did the show at the Winnipeg Ice Fishing Show back. That was, I believe, November 5th, and that was coming off of the Jets' overtime victory against Montreal, if you remember, which was their first game back after that West Coast trip. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people have pointed to that game against the Blues, because you remember the Blues were, I think, first in the division at that point. The Jets shut them out. A lot of people have pointed to that game as kind of the turning point, because that was after the loss at home to the Leafs. But to me, the turning point that I've seen, the way they've played, and again, I mean, it's too early in the season really to say that necessarily this is a turning point. But for me, the first third of the season, the turning point was when the Jets went on that West Coast trip and got 5 of 6 points, including being badly outplayed by the LA Kings in that first period, and then being badly outplayed by the Golden Knights, but still getting a point. It's when they came back home, they beat Montreal. I forget who I'd have to check the schedule. I had it here. Who did they beat after that, guys? I think they beat Chicago, if I'm not mistaken. They shut out Chicago, then they beat Dallas 5-1, then they lost to Calgary, but then they went on that run where they beat the Kraken, they beat the Ducks, then there was a loss to the Pens in there. But the point is, after that 3-game road trip where they got 5 of a possible 6 points, and you could argue that they really should have only got maybe 2 of the possible 6 points, that was when I think they realized that they were picking up too many wins on the backs of Connor Hellebuck's goaltending, and they had to improve their overall team play. And I think what we've seen is, regardless of injuries, and there's no shortage of injuries, not compared to the Avalanche guys, but aside from the fact that Nick Ehlers has only played 2 of 26 games, I mean, you've got Mason Appleton, who's been out now, and you've got Logan Stanley's out, right? Like Saku Manalainen is out. Morgan Barron was out for a significant amount of time, right? But they just seem to keep rolling. And whether it's Axel Jonsson-Fjällby, whether it's a Mikey Esimont, right? Like, they have call-ups either, that are up with the team or from the AHL that have filled in admirably. Like Mikey Esimont, for me, has been, in addition to Josh Morrissey, who's going to set career highs, like Mikey Esimont has been one of the best stories, because not only is he playing maybe more NHL games than you thought, Dave, but he's really, really flourishing right now, playing in the Jets' top 6.
Yeah, I mean, again, we've talked about the Mikey Esimont, and it's funny because people ask me, they said, well, what kind of player is he? And I said, like, this was before he got he was recalled, but really kind of people had a chance to kind of see him in a few more than, a number of games consecutively. And I said, he is a tenacious, abrasive style of player, someone that the Jets don't have on this roster. They really don't. They haven't had it since, like we said before on last night's show, Brandon Tanev. And even Tanev's a little bit different, but, he was faster than Esimont, but Esimont's, I think, a little bit more, like I said, aggressive probably than Tanev was. And you see it. And I've got so many examples on the IC Dave Twitter account of what Esimont did in the AHL. Like, it's funny, actually, there's one if you want to look at it, it's in the morning papers today under Weber wrote a story about Esimont in his Gamer yesterday. So in my commentary beside the link, I linked to a couple of Esimont plays that are notable. One, of course, was last night where he was driving Johnson absolutely bananas. And then there's a play with the Moose where he scored a goal, and then right after he scored, he skates by the opposing team and kind of gives a little tap, gets them going, and of course there becomes a scrap right after. And that's the kind of player he is. He gets under your skin. And it's true. The fact of the matter is, he gets his opponent so focused on trying, like we talked about that play where he chipped it to Kyle Connor. And I'm not saying that he necessarily did. It could have just been a breakdown and 2 guys chose to go after him. But it's also entirely possible he did something to piss someone off. And so someone wanted to get to him, and they thought, here's an opportunity to hit him into the boards. So they, one guy went, the other guy went, and of course left Kyle Connor all alone, which you cannot do. And that's what I think Mikey Esimont does for that line. He really does. He's an aggressive forechecker, and he's a good passer, but he, like I said, he can really, he can bring an element that Pierre-Luc Dubois and Kyle Connor don't necessarily have. And I think that's, one thing that a lot of the guys, even with like a guy like Axel Jonsson-Fjällby, who has good speed, doesn't bring to that line. So we'll see if he can stay. But I think, Ezzy, I think you're right. In the first, third of this season, Mikey Eyssimont, the traditional stories that we would have come to expect from this Jets team, Connor Hellebuck being a Vezina-style goaltender, Josh Morrissey. I mean, that's definitely the fact that Josh Norrisy is done what he's done. It's a remarkable story, but it's not a huge leap. Like, it's big. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to undersell it because I still think it's significant, a lot more than Connor Hellebuck returning to form. But I think that the guys like Saku Manalainen kind of becoming an everyday player after, being removed from the league one season with Carolina, and now Saku Manalainen, obviously we don't know what his status is going to be long-term based on what happened to him.
It's been found money. Like, it was a great pickup. And at the time, I really didn't think much of it, to be honest with you. I thought, okay, maybe Manalainen will play for the Moose. Maybe he'll be a 13th forward. But now you can actually say Manalainen is actually missed in the Jets lineup. Like, he really is. Like, you can say that. Like, on the penalty kill, on the third line, he's actually a very useful player for them.
I thought the Lowry, Manalainen, Barron line, had started to play, had started to really come together as a trio, because they were. The games are blurring together, so forgive me. I don't remember exactly the game I'm referencing, but they were just too physical on the forecheck for the opposition to handle. And I don't know that they were playing a great team with, the Jets were, but that doesn't matter. That's sort of irrelevant.
You're probably thinking of the Panthers game, Drew. That was the game.
Yes, that's exactly what it was. Yeah. Thank you, Ezzy. It was the Panthers game where the Panthers could not handle them on the forecheck. They were down low and they were cycling, and the Panthers you look at those three guys. I mean, those are three big boys there. There's those are men. Those aren't young players. I mean, Morgan Barron's still a young player, obviously, but Lowry and Manalainen they're full-grown men, and they're just imposing their will on the opposition. In that Florida Panthers game, that was the exact game I was referencing, Ezzy, where they were just they were just too much to handle for the Panthers, especially on the forecheck and in their own zone. And obviously, it's a shame that Manalainen's banged up, and we don't know, and we won't know until tomorrow probably how significant the injury is. But the Jets, I mean, I think that just look, they're just plugging guys into that sort of bottom of their lineup. In the case of Mikey Eyssimont, the top of the lineup, they're plugging guys in and they're finding success with them, which I think speaks to the culture that is being built within that room right now, and that everybody is pulling on the rope in the same direction. Even if you just are back in the lineup for the first time in 4 games, you know exactly what is expected of you. There's definition to everyone's roles and expectations, which, I harken back to Bill Belichick. His mantra as the head coach of the New England Patriots is do your job. Drew Mindell, do your job. Dave Minuk, do your job. Ezra Ginsburg, do your job. Folks in the chat room, do your job. That's smashing the like button, by the way. But just focus on yourself.
Yeah.
If Drew knows what to do, and Dave knows what to do, and Ezra knows what to do, and they do it, the team is going to have success. The team is
which one of us is Tom Brady in this scenario?
Well, I don't know that any of us would qualify as Tom Brady in this scenario, but exactly what I'm saying is just, rather than focus on the noise
you'd be Drew Bledsoe.
Oh, I'm Drew Bledsoe. I mean, that wasn't when I was a kid, I was very excited. I was a Patriots fan when I was a kid because of Drew Bledsoe. I'm like, hey, there's a player with my same name. And I had a Patriots jacket, I think, in 1988.
The old school logo, right?
I don't know if it had Patriot Pat on it. I'm trying to remember back. I think I'll tell you what, it was the year that they went to the Super Bowl and lost to the Packers. So what was that, 90?
Right. Oh, yeah, that's I was going to say, that's like early mid-90s. Yeah,
I want to say that was 94. Was when that was, and I had that year's jacket, which was after Pat Patriot. They had sort of a beveled silver logo that we're really going down the rabbit hole here. We don't need to keep going there. But my point was, do your job. And I think all the players in the Jets dressing room know exactly what their job is, and that is what is translating to the success on the ice.
Curtis Martin was the running back then, right, Drew?
Curtis Martin was the running back. Yeah, okay. Aaron is saying it was 96. That sounds right. It was definitely, I think, 96.
Curtis Martin, because then he went to the Jets, if I'm not mistaken, after that, right? But he was really good for the Patriots back in the day. But yeah, Bledsoe obviously has been forgotten a little bit because Brady is. I don't think anybody's going to argue at this point Brady's the GOAT. But Bledsoe was also a really good quarterback. But you're right, Drew, and you could just look at the numbers, guys. We've talked about it a little bit, but the fourth line, just singling it, just kind of focusing on the fourth line, the minutes are up, so the time on ice is up, and the production is up. And the same thing goes for the third line. Like we talked about it, Adam Lowry scored another goal yesterday. He's on pace for a career high, I believe. So, I mean, this all factors in, right? Like everything is turning up Jets right now. The special teams are better, both the power play and the PK. You're reducing those shots against. You're getting more production from the unsung hero guys, like the glue guys on the third and fourth line, right? Also, just going back to Mikey Esimont, don't know if you guys noticed this. I know Dave will kind of, like that. He knows how much I like the hockey geography. But Mikey Esimont went to nearby St. Cloud State, and Charlie Lindgren is now the number one goalie for Washington with Darcy Kemper out. He was a teammate of Mikey Esimont's at St. Cloud State. So just one of those cool kind of hockey geography things. But Esimont, I think I saw earlier, one of our comments, Doug was saying, you got to produce in that top six role. And I agree. He's only got 1 goal and 4 points, I believe, on the season. But Esimont's getting those chances, guys. Like yesterday, was it yesterday's game? I forget. They're kind of all, forming into one when he hit Morgan Barron's skate. Was that yesterday? It might have been 2 nights ago.
No, it was yesterday.
Was it yesterday? Okay, exactly. We've been doing, 3 shows in 3 days here, so that's why I'm probably forgetting. But so Esimont almost scored a goal, but it's different if you're not producing points and you're not playing well and you're not creating chances for yourself, Dave. But Esimont is creating chances for himself. Like I want to say his career high in shots was in that Ducks game. He had 4. I was looking earlier, so he's getting chances, and he's not a passenger on that line. Like he's a guy. I actually think he's a great fit on that line with Connor Dubois. And I think the points will start to come. I don't think he's going to score 20 goals this year. That's not what I'm saying. But I do think he's doing a lot of things away from the puck, and he's really helping that line. So I just don't see Bonus taking Esimont off of that line anytime soon, Dave.
I think what it comes down to, Ezzy, and what's critical to remember is that he's not there permanently. He's a placeholder for Nikolai Ehlers. And so the point is that, yes, Nikolai Ehlers is going to be your right winger with Pierre-Luc Dubois and Kyle Connor. And Nikolai Ehlers is the guy who's going to probably put up, the big points that folks are expecting. But if you're producing and you're winning, then honestly, points are a lot less important. And we talked about this. You don't need to have a top 10, top 5 scorer. Like it's great. It's wonderful, but the reality is, look at the Oilers who consistently have, Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl right at the top of the scoring list. But what happens when those 2 guys are able to successfully get shut down? Well, your team, success is not as significant. And I think the one thing with the Jets we're seeing is that they're evenly distributing the production. So Mark Scheifele's having a great year, and Pierre-Luc Dubois is having a great year. Kyle Connor's heating up, and Blake Wheeler's heating up. Cole Perfetti's, is successfully producing. So the reality is you can afford to have Mikey Esimont not necessarily producing 5 goals and 6 assists during his time on that second line, simply because the other guys are still producing. And look, you've been able to mitigate losing one of your top wingers, probably your top winger, in addition to Kyle Connor. And you've mitigated it through, as he just said, 24 games of the season, and you're a top team in the Western Conference. So what it's allowed you to do, what these players have allowed you to do, is you don't have to go in a desperation type of move and make a trade in order to replace Nikolai Ehlers, because your team is lagging. Your team isn't lagging. Your team has success. So therefore, what it's allowed you to do is to not more than tread water. You're flying above the water right now. You're in a hovercraft, because the reality is, from a Jets perspective, Nikolai Ehlers is going to come back. We don't know when exactly. It's going to be probably still some time. But the truth of the matter is, and knowing that you're able to successfully have your team continue to produce, it's a plus. So yeah, guys like Menelainen and guys like Esimont have been a breath of fresh air from a Jets club that we didn't know. And obviously there's guys waiting in the wings, guys like Jeff Malott, guys like Kevin Stenlund, guys like Alex Limoges.
and Jansen Harkins. Let's go back, and I think it deserves a little bit more mention. The beautiful pass from Jansen Harkins. So it's not only Esimont moving up to the Connor Dubois line, Dave. It's like Manalainen goes out, so Harkins is elevated, and not only does he play well, but he actually contributes to a goal, right? So I think this year's Jets depth is a lot stronger than I thought it was going to be. That was my big concern, right? But I think Manalainen, Esimont, Axel Jonsson-Fjällby, these guys are working. The depth of this Jets forward group is actually better than it was last year, and that was with Andrew Kopp and with Paul Stastny. So,
and by the way, who said it? Who said that the Jets would be able to be okay without Kopp and Stastny's production? I thought Cole Perfetti would stand in and get the points.
No, it was definitely you, Nostradamus.
There we go.
But to your point, though, I think it changes what the focus will be for Kevin Cheveldayoff moving forward. Let's assume that it's status quo through this month, because I wouldn't expect to see any moves or anything this month. But rather than trying to bring a body into the team in order to sort of keep them afloat or get them over the playoff hump, they would theoretically, and then you go back to 17-18, because that's the best example you have for when a Jets team was performing to this level. You're looking at a guy who's going to come in and augment, who's going to enhance the team. And I saw a lot of chat about a guy like Ryan O'Reilly, just to, add another forward to this team. And I don't really know yet, what, if it needs to be a forward or it needs.
You're going to have to give up pretty substantial assets for Ryan O'Reilly, Drew.
Well, no, but I'm talking about you're looking, past actions are a great indicator of what's going to happen in the future as it pertains to Kevin Cheveldayoff. And you're looking at, he'd probably be starting in January, looking at the rental market to bring somebody in, to continue to augment what this team has. Does
O'Reilly only have 1 year left on his deal?
I think he's a pending UFA at season's end, if I'm not mistaken, and I'm going to double check that right now. But I'm fairly certain that he's a pending UFA, which is why a lot of people have sort of looked at him, because again, it would be similar to when the Jets.
I thought O'Reilly had a few years left on his deal, but I could be wrong. I've been wrong before.
Similar to what?
Well, I could be wrong. Another guy whose name is going to be out there.
Ryan O'Reilly's a UFA at season's end, so he is.
That's a big one. That is a big one, and we just saw O'Reilly a couple nights ago, right? I've always really liked O'Reilly. To me, he's still he could be a number 1 or number 2 center on most teams still. His offensive production maybe has tailed off a little bit, but Patrick Kane is obviously the guy I was going to mention. I just don't see. First off, Kane is going to have a big say in where he goes, and I just don't think Winnipeg's on the top of the list. That's nothing against the Jets organization. I personally would imagine that the Jets aren't high on his list. I think everybody kind of knows, the teams that have been mentioned there, right? Like the Rangers, Vegas is one of those teams, right? Yeah. Maybe Colorado. But I think you're right, Drew. But when I think of, if you're going to start talking about, some big moves that could come before the trade deadline, which is obviously a long time away. For me, it would be, acquiring a top 4 defenseman, even though the Jets, I think, have done a really good job so far with their group. To me, that would be what I would be looking to add, in addition to maybe a depth forward. But we'll see. I mean, look at Paul Stastny was a trade that nobody saw coming, and it worked out perfectly. Mm-hmm. And without Stastny, they do not get to the West Final. He was a big part of that run to the West Final, even though Scheifele was playing out of his mind and Buff was playing out of his mind. Everybody on that Jets team, that was an incredible run. So I would see, the Jets going for a top 4 defenseman before they were going for, a Ryan O'Reilly type of player. But we'll see. I mean, I think this is the type of year, like Dave said, in a year in which, the New Jersey Devils and the Seattle Kraken are doing as well as they are, and nobody expected that. I think this is the type of year that, it's completely wide open. Look at Colorado, look at Tampa Bay. They're not as good as they were last year. So I think you do move, again, it's way too early to get into this, boys, but I would trade a first-round pick this year.
Well, you're in that Wheeler window. Remember, that was a couple years ago that was the topic, and everyone thought the window was closed after the disaster that was last year. Well, it seems the window has been pried open a little bit more, and you really have, you got the next couple of years. Who knows what happens in the future? I'm not saying that Connor Hellebuyck's on his way out or Mark Scheifele's on his way out. In fact, there's a better than even chance that Scheifele would, has found rejuvenation here with the coaching change and everything else. But, so if that window is still open and that's what sort of you're looking at in the next couple of years, well, this certainly seems like the kind kind of year where you would maybe try and hit a home run to that effect. And, there's a lot of players who are going to be available, and it's certainly too soon to, narrow your focus down on player X or player Y. And it wouldn't be unheard of for the Jets to do more than one move, which we saw in 17-18 as well, where they went out and got, some additional players there. But this right now, the way things are going with this team, there's no reason not to think that the sky is the limit. And as a result, for them to plan accordingly to try and take advantage of that based on their recent play. Look, 18-7-1, tops in the Western Conference points percentage, tops in the Central Division. These are all things that you should be celebrating from the Winnipeg Jets perspective, Dave.
Yeah, I think there's no question about it. And I think Dean made a good point. I think that's one of those things you have to think about, right? We often see these trade deadline acquisitions. You think, well, how impactful was that? Was the player able to integrate into the lineup sufficiently? And obviously there's still a lot of time left in the season at the trade deadline. But, maybe Kevin Cheveldayoff does, not necessarily right now, but, in the next, maybe in January, maybe he thinks, I'm going to start something a little bit early. I'm going to get my business done in advance, and whether Ehlers is back or not. Yeah, look, augmenting your team and allowing guys to, have more depth, because look at the lineup right now, right? We've got all these guys who are Sacramento line, and we don't know the status, but it doesn't obviously look very good. Logan Stanley, we don't know his status, but we don't, so that means that right now the Jets have Dylan Samberg, who we assume would return back to the lineup, and of course Kyle Capobianco would be the extra defenseman, but right now they have no extra forwards, right? So there's going to be what I'm saying is that necessitates a recall. We obviously don't know when Mason Appleton is going to return exactly. So we'll have to see, he's probably getting, closer. I mean, Morgan Barron, obviously he was a little accelerated from what we expected. So you could have Mason Appleton back relatively soon. I'd have to check the numbers and the dates again. I haven't exactly looked at that. So there's still a lot of question marks as to their own players and the health of their own players, who they're going to get back. So it leads up to a lot of excitement and a lot of interesting discussion, that we didn't anticipate having this early in the season.
It certainly didn't. Yeah, the tenor of the conversation has dramatically changed from what I think we expected in the preseason. When we come back, the Jets talk continues. Cam Poitras from CJOB's Jets at Noon is going to join us on the show. Don't go anywhere. It's a Saturday morning. It's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on YouTube and all of our social media platforms.
Jerry Seinfeld, keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hi, Ez. A strange question for you. But why are you lying on the ground being crushed by a piano?
Well, Drew, I definitely tried to carry this baby grand piano down the stairs by myself, and somehow I failed miserably.
Right. Yeah. Sorry, that was a silly question on my part. My apologies. Would you like me to call Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage to help you move the piano? They are the most experienced piano moving company in Winnipeg, after all.
Yes, please call Rolly's and hurry. This piano is very, very heavy.
Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage offers stress-free residential moving services while taking great care of your personal belongings, including your piano. At Rolly's, no job is too big or too small. For more information, visit rollys.com.
Hi, it's Drew from Illegal Curve here. Selling your home can be stressful, but it wasn't for me. Thanks to my friends at Zappia Group Realty, they made the process so easy. My home sold within 48 hours and with multiple offers. Zappia Group Realty took care of everything with their exquisite customer service and attention to detail. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, get started by talking to Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Online at zappiagroup.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whitened my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go...
We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs, from restorative to cosmetic dentistry, and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal, starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
Back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Drew Mindell, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg with you, and we're thrilled to welcome to the program from CJOB Jets at Noon. Cam Poitras joins us on the show. Cam, good morning. Thanks for joining us. How are things in your world?
Things are great. Thanks for having me, guys. Really appreciate this. It's this is great. Thanks.
Well, it's our pleasure to have you. Appreciate you waking up and joining us bright and early on this Saturday morning. You know, Cam, we've all talked about the Jets team and how surprising they are, and how the performance of this team continues to roll on. And I mean, I think you see it on this road trip that just ended. You know, Saturday or on Thursday, they go into St. Louis, and the Blues are, allegedly, the Jets were, most people would have thought the Jets and the Blues would be competing with one another this year. The Jets just are miles ahead of the Blues right now. I mean, this year the Blues look like a bit of a disaster. The Jets go in there and they just beat a weakened opponent. And then yesterday, second half of a back-to-back, you're down to 5 defensemen. You're playing a bad team in Chicago, but they just are sort of imposing their will on their opponent in a manner that I don't think any of us expected at the start of this season. It's, I don't really have a question so much here as I'm rambling incoherently, I realize, but just from your
Cam, can you ask yourself a question maybe and help Drew out here?
Well, I mean, the Winnipeg Jets, how are they doing so far? I mean, I don't know. I think everybody was kind of bracing themselves for what may have been a bad year. There was a lot of and you saw it in the stands. You saw it in terms of, just sort of fan reaction and stuff like that. There, after a season like that, and I think you got to give props to Kevin Cheveldayoff and all that stuff, who I think was trying to make moves. I think he was trying to. I mean, there was those rumors going around about Scheifele and how close was Wheeler to be going. Did the Jets have to eat up salary for him and stuff like that? And maybe they were willing to, maybe they weren't. I mean, this is sort of stuff that we'll never really know the answers to. But there was kind of like a brace for impact this season, I felt. And I felt that from the fan base. And it's worked out really, really well. I mean, the fact that they didn't make those moves and that they were patient has sort of been, and it's like, was it intentional or was it not intentional? Was there the Jets had a top 10 team last season that didn't perform like a top 10 team. This year they're performing like a top 10 team, and they may be even better. They may be a top 5 team. I mean, right now they certainly are. And so, am I impressed with the Winnipeg Jets? Absolutely, I am. They're a much better and cohesive team than they are. We can go into that, last year, and, you have Paul Maurice basically after he resigned saying things like, I shouldn't have come back, and I was wishy-washy and all that. And I think you have to, that one, you got to give, that one's on the Jets management, because if you have a coach saying those sort of comments, I think that you have to be, I think you got to, those sort of comments, if you have a coach that isn't 100% in, that sort of stuff has to be rectified. And I think that's on the management. Great. But would the Winnipeg Jets have been the team that they are right now without Rick Bowness? Would they be the team they are right now without going through last year and all those struggles and stuff like that? So these are questions that we never know, but I will say this, in a long answer to this, I'm very impressed with this team. They've been playing absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, and obviously, it's not just us, Cam, here in Winnipeg or Manitoba saying this. Now you're starting to see a little bit more attention, right? Now TSN is spending, at least 15 seconds of a 1 hour show talking.
Oh, so nice of them.
Jets, right? I mean, you have to talk about the Mitch Marner point streak for at least 45 minutes, right?
Yeah.
But, I wanted to ask you about Cole Perfetti, because, we do our post-game show, right? And, he had another goal yesterday, and he had a goal in the game against St. Louis. And we were talking about, how he's got such a muted celebration, right? He kind of just scores and puts his head down, skates to the bench, right? I really love that. But I mean, how fun is he to watch right now? Because he was getting chances earlier in the season, and I'm sure you and Jim talked about it on Jets at noon on CJOB. But like right now, you can tell that he's playing with that extra bit of confidence.
Yeah, he's third right now in rookie scoring. I mean, it's kind of like a sneaky little storyline for the Winnipeg Jets. Because Cole Perfetti has been an imperfect player so far this year. I think he's been an exciting player, but I out of all the players on the Winnipeg Jets, I think I maybe worry about Cole Perfetti the least. He's a smart kid. He's a real smart kid. He's got a good drive. He he seems to be in the right exact mindset for what he needs to be. I mean, a lot of times you'll see some of these younger guys and they can't take criticism, and it's difficult for them to sort of self-reflect and analyze. I don't think Cole Perfetti has that problem whatsoever. I think he's dialed in big time. And the thing is, it's like you have to be willing to accept some mistakes from a guy like that, because he's a top 6 player and he has to remain and be a top 6 player. Right. And so the team is doing right by him by giving him this shot, and he's gone with it. Like that goal that he scored yesterday in Chicago was a veteran move. He was patient. He waited with the puck and he waited for his open opportunity, and bam, he took it. And it was a great shot. And as he becomes more confident and he finds and he gives himself more space, he's just going to get better and better and better like that. And, I don't know. We'll see how the season goes here, but I think he's in the Calder conversation. I think it's a little bit muted right now because I don't think he's been out there creating that much flashy stuff, but hey, he's picking up points here and there. And we'll see how the back 3 quarters of the season goes.
Flash is overrated. Substance is the key, and much like the substance that Cam Poitras brings to the Illegal Curve hockey show. We're live on our YouTube channel.
Oh, you're being much too kind.
I had to make up for it, Cam, after I rambled inanely without asking a question off the top of the interview.
Well, don't worry about that. I mean, that's what I do. I ramble inanely for a living. So
that's part of the charm of being on these broadcast mediums, isn't it? Anyways, Cam hosts Jets and New with Jim Toth on CJOB Radio. Saturday morning, we're live with the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
Cam, one of the things that has been a focus of discussion here in Winnipeg for a number of years has been the fourth line. And while there hasn't been a set fourth line this season, I saw you tweeting about it a couple of days ago, and I agreed with you. Like it's interesting how now, and I'm not going to say David Gustafsson, a healthy David Gustafsson, a consistent David Gustafsson has been a difference maker, but it seems like David Gustafsson has been a different maker. We know, especially on the PK, what a valuable impact he's had. But what are you seeing from the fourth line that's showing how different it is this season than we have in maybe since the GST line?
Yeah. It's been sort of, there's been a lot of motion back there. You know what I mean? Like, Sam Gagner is going to come in. Mike Yasemont, when he joined the team, he was down there. Jansen Harkins has come in and out of the lineup and all that sort of thing. So it's Saku Menelainen was down there. We'll see what his injury is. Didn't look good. Look with holding on to his shoulder, but we'll wait and see what the official word is on that. And David Gustafsson and stuff like that. And Axel Janssen-Fjällby. They know what they're doing, and they're not going out there. They're not putting up huge amounts of points, but the thing that they're doing so well is they're going out there. They're bringing energy. They're bringing passion. They're hitting the ice. And what they're doing is they're also, and this is very, very important. This is what the fourth line couldn't do last year. And this is why that line struggled. And that's why their ice time was held back and all that stuff. And that's a much bigger discussion and stuff like that about last year compared to this year, coaching and all that. And, who knows what actually was going on. But the fourth line last year was not effective. This year, they're bringing energy. They're bringing passion to it. They're driving. They're creating havoc out there. And the most important thing is they're keeping the puck out of the net. So I think Axel Janssen-Fjällby, I think he might be, -2 or something like that. I think he's got a goal and an assist, but that's something that you can totally accept. And the fourth line right now is far ahead in the plus minus category than they were last year. And so, plus minus is not an exact stat and stuff like that, but it's certainly an indication. And being able to, and they've only played about a minute and a half more than last year from the fourth line this year to last, but those minute and a half are big time. It's absolutely big time. And it's so important for those guys to go out there and roll with it. man, it's good to roll with it. I mean, it's always a bonus if you can roll 4 lines. And the Winnipeg Jets have had that. They've had that this year. And I think that's made a big, big difference because there's confidence in those guys. That they're going to go out there. They might not score. Maybe it'll take them 5 games to score or something like that, but they're going to go out there and they're going to make sure the puck stays out of the net, and they're going to generate something. They're going to pass momentum on to another line. So it's been a big bonus.
Yeah, even if you don't score, if you tilt the ice in your team's direction, then you've certainly accomplished something, especially from the bottom 6 or the 4th line, specifically in this instance. Cam, if you're looking ahead, I mean, and we always look ahead in sports, and the Jets right now, given their record, would be a proverbial buyer come trade deadline time. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And obviously, you don't necessarily have to buy at the trade deadline. You can buy anytime you want. If you were looking at a position that needs to be augmented on this team, what is it? Is it another depth forward? Is it adding another maybe top 4 defenseman on the back end? Where are you sort of spending your either prospects or draft picks to try and supplement this team?
Top 4 defenseman and another depth piece at defense, just because I think you're going to need it, and a veteran who can join the forward group. Who's been around a long time, and a guy that can bring a lot of energy and can join a checking role. I don't think the Jets are going to need more scoring. I think you're starting to see that emerge. It was slow to start this year while I think the team was adjusting to the systems, but they're really starting to hit their stride. I think they've had 36 goals over their last 8 games, and the prior 18 before that. I think they had like 51, 52, 53, 54 goals. Not that much, but the offense is starting to come, and that has to do with the power play. The power play is starting to pick up as well. That's definitely helped out. But I think like Nick Ehlers is sort of going to be like a rental player. He's going to come in right around that time, and I think he's going to come in and he's going to have a big impact if he can stay healthy. But it's I think in terms of the forward group, you're going to maybe some help as a checker, a guy that can kind of slide in next to Lowry, bring sort of that energy and be a guy that's going to go out there, a total gamer. And in terms of like a depth defenseman, I think that every time the Jets have ever bought, they've always picked up a depth defenseman. I think Craig Heisinger said that before. He's been like, you need 7-8 defensemen in the playoffs.
Who is going to be this year's Jordy Ben, right, Cam?
Well, exactly. And a top 4 defenseman, a guy who can slot into that role. I don't know. Kevin Cheveldayoff's the only guy that knows that. Like, I mean, there's all these predictions about who in here. What's going to come down? We'll all see the notification, and it's going to be like, oh, I didn't know that guy was available, or I haven't heard of that guy for a long time, or what team does that guy play for? And he's going to come in and he's going to be a really, really impact player. I trust the Winnipeg Jets scouts. They do a great job. So I'm not going to try to pinpoint a player who's this and that, because it's going to be a guy that's probably going to be a surprise to everybody, but is going to come in and really be effective.
One guy. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say top 4 defenseman. I think is the number one thing.
Yeah, and I mentioned that, Cam, right before we had you on. So I think I agree with everything.
I was listening, and I agreed with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, great minds think alike, right, Cam? Yeah. But Patrick Kane's name is going to be out there pretty much every day until the trade deadline, right? Like Ryan O'Reilly was mentioned by Drew. Like, if the Jets could get Ryan O'Reilly and not subtract like a significant piece off of the roster, then I think the Jets almost become like a Stanley Cup favorite. That's the type of impact a guy like O'Reilly can have. Just look at like what he did, during the 2019 Cup run, right? I just don't see how you don't move I don't know how you get Ryan O'Reilly without moving like a top 6 forward or like, I don't think a first round draft pick and Philly Heinola is going to get you Ryan O'Reilly. I think you might have to give up more. One guy that comes to mind, again, I know it's too early. It's only, early December here, but Sean Monahan on the Montreal Canadiens, right? Like, he's got 17 or 18 points. He's obviously a natural center, but kind of fitting that description of what you said, right, Cam? Like a veteran forward, a guy that can give them energy, can give them offense, but a defensively responsible forward. So that's a guy I just wanted to throw out there, Sean Monahan. I mean, I don't think it's likely the Jets get him. I just think, that's a guy I would throw out there as well.
You don't think the Habs are going to be in playoff contention at the trade dedeadline?
Exactly.
I think it's an absolute detriment to the Habs where they are right now in the standings. They need to be completely falling apart. St. Louis needs to He needs to quit getting his guys ramped up. I think they need to be in the Bedard sweepstakes. I think the worst spot for them is going to be like in 10th, 11th, or 12th in the draft. I don't think that's an opportune place for them. There's an argument to be made about like, look, the Oilers are picking all the time in the like first overall and low, or in high draft picks and stuff like that. It didn't work out for them, but I think the Habs need to, like, a 10th or 11th is just not good for them.
No, you would rather be having a really good shot at the first overall pick, right? Like you definitely don't want to be finishing like 4 or 5 points out of a playoff spot and then, drafting 13th overall or something like that, right, Cam? I agree with you. I wanted to ask you about, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, like, what do you guys think about, maybe Nikolai Ehlers starts to, maybe his injury lasts a little bit longer, and it's sort of a Nikita Kucherov sort of situation.
LTIR until the
LTIR. He's not ready. I mean, he's dealing with his sports, and he's not healing the way that we want it to. And
the
then
Jets have the cap space, so I don't think the cap space will be an issue this year.
Yeah. But like if you're going to bring in a guy like Patrick Kane or maybe a Ryan O'Reilly, there would have to be a little bit more money involved in that. I'm just throwing that out there. I just think we were talking about that in the office. I thought it was an interesting conversation. So,
yeah, I think it's what's it called? Creative cap management. I think they call it something like that, right, Cam? They have a word for it down. Julian Breezeball has a word for it down in Florida.
It's called cap circumvention that the NHL just willingly allows.
It's called I think lawyers called a loophole, right, Dave? But as the token lawyer of this group, right? But I wanted to ask you about Logan Stanley, right? Because it's just such, terrible luck. Like, come on. And the fact that we were talking about this on the post-game show yesterday, Cam, like the fact that Stanley came back in that game, like, to me, is just shows you how tough he is, right? Like mentally and physically. And as you mentioned with Saku Maenalainen, I imagine we're going to get an update this weekend on Maenalainen and Stanley. But I wanted to ask you kind of what you thought of Stanley going in on that back-to-back, because I was telling Dave, and I'm sure you and Jim either talked about it off air or on air, like I thought Stanley should have gone for a conditioning stint and you leave Samberg in the lineup. Like that's what I thought should have happened. I'm not saying that, that's the reason why Stanley is injured. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'll leave that to other people, but I just thought Logan Stanley was a great candidate to get that conditioning stint with the Moose. You keep Samberg in the lineup. You've still got, Kappa Bianco there if you need to pull him in. But I guess so. The question I was going to ask as a kind of corollary to that is, who do you think the Jets will call up? Is it going to be Dom Toninato? Because, like I said, they've got Kappa Bianco there as the seventh defenseman.
Yeah, it'll probably be a forward. Might be Toninato. I mean, likely will be him. We'll wait and see what happens there. But man, yeah, it's rotten luck. The conditioning stint situation. I guess the team was confident that the conditioning staff with the Winnipeg Jets got him to the spot that he needed to be. And because he was practicing for quite a while before they threw him in there. And so, was he a candidate for a conditioning stint? I mean, maybe in hindsight, they would throw him in there. Maybe it wasn't that good idea to have him back to back. Maybe they were testing him out to see just, if the conditioning was good and stuff like that. It would be a much worse situation if Dylan Samberg hasn't had such a good showing in that role. He, he's one of the league leaders in like blocks per 60 minutes played in the league right now. Top 3 or top 4 or something like that. And like, I thought Logan Stanley came in particularly on Thursday there against the Blues. And I thought he had a great game. He had that slap pass behind the net fighting Scheifele. I thought that was a great play by him. And it's like, as long as he's moving his feet, he's a really, really effective defenseman. But if he's standing still, that's when he starts to struggle. And I think he's, defensemen take so much longer to, and not everybody's the same, but defensemen don't take so much longer to develop than forwards. Like it's such a more complicated thing. I mean, look at Josh Morrissey. I mean, was he 27, 28 years old, and he's just starting to come into his own and stuff like that. And so back to back, I mean, in hindsight, the Winnipeg Jets are probably thinking, I mean, he goes into the boards awkwardly and stuff like that. Could have happened at any point, but I think that they're thinking like, maybe we should have thrown Samberg in there to give him a little bit of a break. I think maybe in hindsight, if you asked them, they wouldn't say this, but I think they probably would feel that way.
Saturday morning, you're live with the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Cam Poitras from CJOB Jets at noon is our guest. Reminder, tomorrow night, the Illegal Curve post-game show, right around 8:45 p.m. back here on our YouTube channel, following the Jets and the Washington Capitals.
You know, Cam, last night the Jets picked up their 18th win in their 26th game, and last season they did that in 41 games. In 41 games, they picked up.
Holy moly!
Win, so.
Is that true?
Yeah,
I know, Drew. If you pulled that out, I know it's true.
No,
that's crazy.
No. First of all, it was Dave, not Drew. Come on, Cam. Give me credit. Don't give Drew credit. That's a Dave stat.
Yeah, Cam, we have one rule on the show, and it's don't ever give Drew credit for anything. Even if he deserves it, you never give it to him.
I'm starting to learn.
Yes. But anyways, don't even acknowledge my presence, and you'll be fine.
Yes. But anyways, so the point is that this team is obviously very improved from what we saw last year. One of the areas that we've seen improvement in is the penalty kill. And I think that's contributed a lot to the reason why they're picking up so many wins, because they're not giving up goals on the power play. And I think if you look at it, they were 29th last season in the penalty kill. Now they're second. So what have you seen from this team in terms of the penalty kill, just in terms of the ability to obviously kill plays and not give up goals?
You know, I haven't. Oh, man, I wish I would have put more thought into the penalty kill, because it's kind of just been a given that it's just been so effective. Is it scheme? Is it personnel? I mean, Scott O'Neill's come in. He's running the PK, and there's been fluctuation, right? Like Mason Appleton was one of their big penalty killers. He moves out, and there was a tiny bit of a drop, but now it's starting to work its way back up there. I just think that they're being aggressive on the puck and they're in the right positions. I just think it's as simple as that, and they're able to clear the puck when they need to. And also Connor Hellebuck. I mean, your best PKer. I mean, what a lame answer here, but your best penalty.
But
killer.
It's true though.
Cliche.
Right?
It's true.
It is a cliche, but it's right. Hellebuck is your best penalty killer, and he ought. You know, it's just you got to call a spade, right?
But Cam, just to interject quickly. Even seeing Blake Wheeler on the PK has been unusual, but it seems to be working. I mean,
Mark Scheifele's been out there too, killing penalties. Yeah. I like Blake Wheeler's a guy that you just kind of point in a direction and you're like, okay, Blake, do this, and he'll just do it. Like, he doesn't really think about it and stuff like that. But they've been finding ways to kill penalties, and I totally agree with you. I think it's been such a boost of confidence, because you take a penalty and stuff like that. I mean, last year they took a penalty and it was like, oh no, you were holding on to your seat. It's like, here we go again. And that's not the case here. So I think that by them being more aggressive on the puck, by them taking away shot lanes, and by Connor Hellebuck really, really being so solid there in net, it's really opened up. It's really built that team and given them some confidence. And they haven't been taking as many penalties. It's been a boost of confidence for them. I would say that, and it's really helped all other facets of the game. I really truly believe that. I believe that.
Cam, we'll let you go on this last question. We were having this debate on last night's post-game show, and the word that we were debating is elite. You know, are the Jets among the NHL's elite? Would you rank them as an elite team in the NHL? And up until the last couple of games, I was hesitant to go there. I was saying that this was a good hockey team. This was a very good hockey team, but there were too many sort of cautionary red flags for me. And then I've changed my tune. Sort of a combination of the Jets' impressive play, because it's been tremendous, and the fact that you look around the league and you look around the Western Conference in particular, and all the other teams that you would typically consider in that elite category, namely the Colorado Avalanche, the Calgary Flames last year, they're all struggling. That there's things going on. Colorado, there's no guarantee that they're going to be healthy at any point this season. You know that if they were healthy, they'd be elite, but they haven't been. And the injury bug has been, it's reared its ugly head there significantly. So from your perspective, let me throw that question out at you. Would you use the word elite when it comes to the Winnipeg Jets in their place within the NHL so far this year?
100%. They're an elite team. They have goaltending. They have defense. They got guys who can score. The penalty kill is elite in the league, to borrow that word. And the power play, I think, is ranked 11th, and it's climbing, and it's on a roll here. They have the best goaltender in the league. We can have an argument about where he is in terms of the best players in the league. I think he's certainly Connor Hellebuyck is certainly a top 10. I may even put him top 5. I think he's had the biggest impact on his team in terms of wins and losses this season than anyone else. I think you got to give that to Connor Hellebuyck. I mean, Connor McDavid is Connor McDavid. He's the best player. He's the best player in the world. But I mean, in terms of wins and losses, I think Connor Hellebuyck has had much more impact on the team. So I think what you're starting to see, and I don't want to get myself into trouble here, but you're starting to see a team become something really special and start to gel. And I understand we're early. No, we're not even early on in this season. I'm not going to say we're early on because we're not.
A third of the way through it.
We're a third of the way through this year.
Yeah.
You're starting to see a team that, and with the right moves at the deadline, they need some help. This team, they're not certainly perfect, but there's the makings of a team who can make a real run in the playoffs.
I agree with that for sure.
I look at the other teams in the top of the league, the New Jersey Devils. Are they going to be able to sustain that? They're young. When they go to the playoffs, are they going to be able to bring that same level that they're bringing right now in the regular season? Remains to be seen. Not saying it can't happen. The Boston Bruins are a team really, really veteran heavy. They're getting Linus Ullmark's had a great season and all that. I think Boston's a really good team, and I think they could go pretty far. The Leafs, I have absolutely no faith in whatsoever. History has proven me right.
I was just thinking. I'm hoping. I'm gonna see if Cam.
I hate the Leafs. I hate the Leafs.
You got to throw them some shade, right?
Yeah, no, I hate them. I can't stand them. That's just like the house that I grew up in. I hate Leaf hatred. I can't shed it. It's ingrained in me.
It's a Winnipeg thing, Cam.
Yeah, it is. It is. So I will never give them any props. They're a pretty good team, and they've been really able. I will give them some credit.
Did you know, Cam, that Mitch Marner's on a 21 game point streak? I'm not sure.
No, I had no idea. Did he score last game or something like that? But I will give them credit. They've definitely dealt with injuries, particularly in goal. I thought that was going to be a big issue for the Leafs this year. It hasn't been as big of an issue, and they've been able to deal with injuries very, very well and consistently win. They're going to be hot and cold throughout the season, just like Edmonton. I think they're going to go on big streaks and big losses and that sort of thing. But I will give the Leafs some credit there. Tampa Bay is a team I wouldn't want to play in the playoffs again, just because of who they are and the guys they have and the horses they have in the barn. Vegas is a team that I believe, because of their situation and so tied up to the cap, they're a team that they've been insanely healthy. They may have been the healthiest team so far this year. They're a few injuries away from their situation being very similar to last year's and having some problems there. And Logan Thompson, while he's been really good and he's been, I think, propping that team up, considering his the paycheck that he's collecting right now, which is I think league minimum. With him not being as good as he is, I don't think that they would be as successful as they are. And I look at the other teams in the West. The Avalanche have been crazy injured and stuff like that, but I see them still climbing as soon as that starts to fix itself. I don't see them not being a team that at least makes the top 3 in the Central. Maybe the injuries will keep them out of sort of that first seed and stuff like that. But I'm starting to feel, and I'm a homer. I got my own biases and stuff like that. I readily admit that. I'm a big time homer. I'm a Jets fan through and through. But I'm starting to. The Jets, out of all those teams that I'm talking about, they have the best goaltender, which is going to be the big factor in the playoffs. They got guys that can score. They're great on the special teams, and their defense, with a great addition in there, could be amongst the best. And you're starting to see players really start to emerge, and you're starting to see and you're also seeing veteran guys. I'm not going to say all of them didn't have their game last year, but really starting to find their game. So I would put the Winnipeg Jets in the elite, and I think a dance, at least in the Western Conference, I don't think is out of the realm of possibility. I won't say any further than that. I'll just say, but I think the Western Conference is a real possibility for the Winnipeg Jets, and we'll see what happens. Top 4, go for it.
Cam Poitras hosts Jets at noon on CJOB along with our friend Jim Toth. Be sure to tune in Monday through Friday for that. Cam, appreciate your time this morning. Thanks for joining us. A great first appearance here with us at Illegal Curve, and we'll do it again real soon, buddy. Thanks so much.
Absolutely, guys. Thanks so much for having me. Big thrill and a lot of fun. So you guys take care, okay?
Likewise,
Cheers,
Cam. Have a great weekend. We'll do it again real soon. Let's go to break. When we come back, more Jets talk. Samantha Pell from the Washington Post at the bottom of hour number 2 to talk about tomorrow night's Jets opponent. Drew Mindell, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg, Saturday morning. We're live on YouTube and all of our social media platforms.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hi, Ez. A strange question for you. But why are you lying on the ground being crushed by a piano?
Well, Drew, I definitely tried to carry this baby grand piano down the stairs by myself, and somehow I failed miserably.
Right. I'm sorry. That was a silly question on my part. My apologies. Would you like me to call Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage to help you move the piano? They are the most experienced piano moving company in Winnipeg, after all.
Yes, please call Rolly's and hurry. This piano is very, very heavy.
Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage offers stress-free residential moving services while taking great care of your personal belongings, including your piano. At Rolly's, no job is too big or too small. For more information, visit rollys.com.
Hi, it's Drew from Illegal Curve here. Selling your home can be stressful, but it wasn't for me. Thanks to my friends at Zappia Group Realty, they made the process so easy. My home sold within 48 hours and with multiple offers. Zappia Group Realty took care of everything with their exquisite customer service and attention to detail. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, get started by talking to Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Online at zappiagroup.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go,
"We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?"
"I sure do."
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs from restorative to cosmetic dentistry and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal, starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
Hour number 2 of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show starts now. We're live on our YouTube channel. We're live on all of our social media platforms. I'm your host, Drew Mindell. Dave Minuk in the top right, Ezra Ginsburg in the bottom middle. Pardon me. Third straight show in 3 nights.
You need a little agua there, Drew.
Yeah, I'll get a little sip. I just sort of choked on myself there. Clearly, I'm falling apart having to do this many shows, but I'll persevere. I'll hang in there. We got tomorrow night's post-game show.
It's our time to shine. Let's go. Mindell's been taken out. Our plan worked out perfectly. It's Minuk and Ginsburg opportunity to jump in here.
You guys finally got me. You're able to finally poison me, but here we are. I'm going to try and fight through it. But I was going to say is tomorrow night, the Illegal Curve post-game show, 8:45, following the Jets and the Capitals. The Jets starting a 3-game homestand. Washington tomorrow night, their only visit to Winnipeg, at least in the regular season. And then Vegas and Nashville on Tuesday, Thursday, 2 games, of course, that'll have some heightened interest, particularly the Tuesday game against the Golden Knights. But before we get to those games, how do the Jets juggle the roster? How do they sort of reshape the lineup, do you think, in light of the injuries that we're expecting both Manalainen to be out of the lineup, Logan Stanley to be out of the lineup? You know, to me, it's pretty straightforward. Dylan Samberg comes back in for Logan Stanley. I would be beyond shocked to see Kyle Capobianco instead of Dylan Samberg tomorrow. And then, you'll get a call up from the Moose. And is it just, last guy down, first guy up with Tony Nato from your perspective, and you run with the 12 forwards that played last night in Chicago? Or do you think there's maybe something else afoot that might be different than that, guys?
No, I think, Drew, you would agree that it's most likely going to be a forward because, like we talked about, you've got Capobianco who can play actually both on the left side and the right side, even though he's a left shot, right? But yeah, Dylan Samberg is going to go back in. And I mentioned this. And again, the Jets won both the games against the Blues and the Blackhawks. And that kind of goes back to what we're saying, right? Like in previous years, we would be talking more about the Ehlers injury and the Appleton injury, but the Jets keep winning. Same thing with last night, right? They won despite the fact that, Stanley left the game and they were down to 5 defensemen. So Samberg will go in tomorrow, most likely against the Caps. And then, you call up, to me, you call up Dom Toninato, right? Because as Dave has mentioned, he's waiver exempt right now because he cleared waivers. So he's, it's 30 days, which obviously there's been a few days since there. So whatever it is, 25 days, let's call it, guys, right? So Toninato makes the most sense. And there's other guys, Dave has a better grasp on the Moose than I do, but I think Dave mentioned these two yesterday, probably Jeff Malott, Dave, Kevin Stenlund. These are the types of guys that you're talking about, right? If you're not calling up Toninato. But that's the thing with the Jets depth right now, right? Like you're not that concerned. It's not like, even if the Jets had to put Kyle Capobianco, he's played 3 games, I believe, for the Jets. He's been okay. But if Capobianco has to play a little bit of hockey for your team, that's not bad. Like he's a journeyman NHL defenseman. I think the big question is, how serious is the Manalainen injury? Because the Jets have other players, like a guy like Jansen Harkins can step up and fill that type of role. But it seems like Manalainen could be out, weeks, not days here. Stanley, could be longer term as well. That didn't look good, but we'll have to wait and see. But I think, Samberg goes back in, and then you most likely call up Toninato.
And just looking back to see what the injury, timelines were, right? And so for Mason Appleton, it was 8 to 12 weeks, and that was in November. And obviously Ehlers was, about that eight week, I think it was 8 to 10 weeks that Rick Bowness said. Well, sorry, 8 weeks for Ehlers, and he had the surgery back on November 23rd, so not that long ago. And
he had the surgery in Michigan.
He did.
The great state of Michigan.
There you go. But the point is that you've got guys who are most likely not back till sometime like in February, maybe, or January or February. So it's not like those guys are going to be coming back anytime soon. And look, the reality is that Dom Toninato is for sure waiver exempt, and that is something that you have to factor in. So you could easily recall him to be your 13th forward. And Ville Heinola didn't play last night in the game. Daniel Fink, the play-by-play voice of the Manitoba Moose, indicated that he is. What's wrong, Drew?
I was going to say, I don't think the Moose played in the game last night in
Abbotsford. They did not. They had a
little bit of a malaise, Dave.
They definitely had they had whatever it was impacting Ville Heinola was obviously impacting the entire team as they got pumped 7-9. Abbotsford has been just a terrible place for the Moose to go. I don't know what's going on with Abbotsford, but they play terribly whenever they go there. They've been pumped a number of times when they go to play the Canucks. Anyways, the point is that Heinola is right now dealing with an illness that I suspect isn't anything too serious because obviously he was on the road trip with them. But I don't think you need to recall a defenseman because, like we talked about, you don't need to have 8 defensemen. You're better off having Ville Heinola unless you're planning on playing them and planning on rotating Samberg and Heinola. Then that's a different story. But if you're going to just bring up a guy just to sit in the press box and watch, then to me that doesn't make a lot of sense. You keep Heinola with the Moose. You let him play big minutes, play big, whether it's on the right side, which we've seen him be doing. And I talked to him after the last game, and we talked about, that the difference in playing on his right side and what that means to him. I talked to Eric Dubois about it as well as the Jets have tried to, and we've seen this with players, right? We've seen this with whether it was Jack Roslovic, who played center for the Manitoba Moose and then all of a sudden became a winger, the last 10 games he played in the AHL. Or Ville Heinola going from the left side and saying, hey, well, I got to be able to play on the right. So he's on the right side for the Moose. And again, that's something that's a little bit different. So, and in terms of recalls, you're thinking to yourself, okay, well, you could get Toninato back up easily, and then he becomes your 13th forward. And the severity of the injury to Manalainen necessitates what you're going to do. Are you going to recall Stenlund, Limoges, or Malott? Those are your 3 options, I would suggest. Brad Lambert actually had a big hit in the third period of last night's game. I'm not sure if there's going to be supplemental discipline on that one because it was kind of a late hit where he was taken out. And they were getting pumped, so it was kind of an unnecessary one. It looked like he
delivered the hit, or he was the victim of a hit?
No, he was a victim of a hit at the blue line. Okay. And then I was going to tweet it out, but then he came back in the game, so it was kind of unnecessary. It looked like he just got clipped in the face as well. So.
But do you want Lambert? Like, don't they want Lambert? They want Lambert to stay with the Moose, right, Dave? Like, I don't see him as an option here, even if he's completely healthy.
100%. He's not an option. There's not even, I don't want to give that. I'm trying to dissuade people from thinking that's an option. Brad Lambert.
Well, when you start revving up that big bad Brad train, Dave, you know how people get excited. You just start talking about that, right?
Yeah, that's true. But anyway, so the point is Brad Lambert isn't going anywhere. He'll stay with the Moose. He'll marinate. That's not a bad thing. Of course, Chaz Lucius, he was weeks away. He may be going to the World Juniors to play for the U.S., which is, I think their camp starts in a few days. Actually, I think it's next week that the USA camp starts. So he may be loaned to the American team. We don't know about his, like I said, when I talked to Mark Morrison about it, Mark said that that he was weeks away along with Cole Meyer, who was, I saw them, like Daniel Fink tweeted out a photo from skate, and Cole Meyer was in the yellow non-contact. I didn't see Chaz Lucius on the ice, so he may not have gone on the trip. I don't know yet. I can find that out. But like I said, I think the most likely recalls, and it's all predicated on what happens with Saku Manalainen. But for sure, it's either going to be a Kevin Stenlund or Jeff Malott or Alex Limoges after Dom Tonnato, because again, you have to factor in waivers, right? And I thought the Jets actually took an unnecessary risk by putting Tonnato on waivers because, well, you're saying, well, you got all these other guys to replace him. You always need depth, and you don't really want to lose a guy for the Moose because you need the Moose to kind of continue to chug along because you don't want the development of your young players to stall. So I think, like, for me, those are the guys that you'd call. And one thing that Kevin Stenlund mentioned, and I thought it was a curious comment, not a curious comment, but an insightful comment, was he said, we were talking about someone asked him a question in one of the post games, and he said, well, the Jets are watching. So that these guys know that's the benefit, of course, of having the team here in Winnipeg is that, and we see Kevin Cheveldayoff off at the Moose games all the time. These guys are constantly watching, and they know that, their performances are being evaluated. So yeah, that's a long way of saying it really is going to be one of those top three guys, and they've all done stuff to merit it. Jeff Malott has really started to produce, scoring goals for the Moose more consistently. Alex Limoges has been a really nice addition. He was very good for San Diego last year, played some games, I believe, for Anaheim, but he's kind of a crafty player and doesn't have the same sort of tenacious game as Mikey Esimont, but he's smart with the puck, good on the power play. And again, Kevin Stenlund's a big body and he can play. So I mean, any one of those guys would be an appropriate recall if you're needing an additional body in addition to Dominic Tonnato.
Look, I mean, and I think in addition to, what you're saying about, Kevin Stenlund saying the Jets are always watching, a lot of these guys have to know that when they get called up to the Jets, they're actually getting an opportunity in the lineup. It's not like you're just getting called up and you're immediately,
well, especially this year, right? Like not so much last year, but this year is very different.
Totally different. Like, Rick Bowness is not shy about just almost constantly churning a little bit of the bottom of the lineup, especially among the forwards. Less so among the D, but to some extent among the D2, with Stanley coming right back in and replacing Sandberg for those couple games. But the forward group, the bottom of the forwards, has almost been just keeping guys fresh, constantly moving guys in and out. So a guy like Tony Nato, if he gets a call back, if he gets called up, tomorrow or depending on the injury situation, which wouldn't be a surprise, he has to know that he's more than likely might get an opportunity to get back into the lineup pretty quickly. I wouldn't expect it necessarily tomorrow against the Capitals, especially with the Moose playing again today in Abbotsford later tonight. But he has to know that, Rick Bowness isn't shy about sort of constantly rotating that lineup, which keeps guys sharp and it keeps guys fresh and it keeps them on their toes, knowing that they're not going to be languishing next to us in the press box, stuffing their face with day-old popcorn like we are. So that is almost a added motivation for these guys, I would say. They see guys getting called up and they see guys coming right back in the lineup, not necessarily injury dependent to get back in the lineup. Just the coaching staff wants to see guys moving in and out as he.
Yeah, and the best example, you're 100% right, and the best examples of that are Mikey Esimont and Jansen Harkins, right? Like Harkins goes down, scores a goal every game, right, Dave? I think it was every game, or it was close to every game, and then he comes up and he's been producing for the Jets. He's a healthy scratch, goes back in. Gagne comes out, Gagne goes back in. Janssen Fjällby, same thing. He's played the majority of the games for the Jets, but he's found himself a healthy scratch a few times, right? And what I think is really interesting, Dave brought up the extent of Saku Manalainen's injury, and I think that's going to have a bigger impact than if Stanley is out long-term. And that's no disrespect to Logan Stanley, but the Jets were chugging along pretty well their top six with Dylan Samberg on that left side of the third pair, right? So if Manalainen is out for, let's say, 4 to 6 weeks, something like that, which is possible, it could be longer, then that's going to depend. And you look at the Jets schedule coming up, and Washington is a bit of a mess right now. So I'm not saying I think the Jets are the favorite to win that game at home, but then you've got Vegas, then you've got Nashville, who's struggling. You've got that back-to-back on the road next weekend. You guys are going to like those late games, right?
Vancouver and Seattle, Saturday, Sunday.
Seattle's actually a 7:00 start, 5:00 Seattle time. So I don't know why, probably for TV purposes. But the point is, Seattle's playing pretty well. And then right before Christmas Eve, you've got Ottawa, and then a back-to-back on the road. Not an easy way to go into the Christmas break, guys, against Boston and Washington on the road, right? So the point is,
just bizarre scheduling.
Bizarre scheduling.
I was going to say, just bizarre scheduling, sending the Jets out west for 2 games to Vancouver and Seattle, home for 1 game. I guess they have to travel back over Winnipeg to stop and play one game against the Senators, and then go out east to Boston and Washington for 2 games. I mean, it's like the NHL. And this is just a bit of an aside. We know how much more difficult the travel is for the Western-based teams. Especially those in Western Canada, maybe less so in the California-based teams, but the Jets have a terrible travel schedule. The Flames, the Oilers, not a good travel schedule. But it's like the NHL goes out of their way to add extra hurdles to it. There's no way that they should look at that, say, okay, yeah, we'll send the Jets out to the Pacific Northwest for 2 games, bring them back home for a game, and then send them out to the Eastern Seaboard for 2 games. That makes a lot of sense. But
it's like you said, Drew, it's not just 2 games; it's back to back. Right.
Well, that too.
So that's why it's going to be so tough. So that's why, to Dave's point, Toninato makes a lot of sense because he's been up with the Jets for the majority of the season, right? But you wonder if they start creeping into their thoughts, Dave, that they say, well, Jeff Mulatto, he gives us more offensively, or Alex Limoges, he gives us more offensively, right? So that's why it's interesting here. Like, I think the big question mark at the beginning of the season was, first off, if the Jets run it back, like, how are the results going to be any different? What kind of impact is Rick Bowness and his coaching staff going to have? Well, we've talked about it. The power play is better. The penalty kills better. Everything's better. Goals against, right? But I think the forward depth, to me, has been one of the biggest stories. Plucking Janssen Fjallby from the Capitals on the waiver wire. Seeing, Sam Gagne's contributions, especially earlier on in the season. Manalainen, the way he has played, whether it's the third line or the fourth line. Mikey Esimon, who for 2 years at training camp, he was a guy that we talked about standing out at training camp, right, at Iceplex, Dave, but now he's getting that opportunity to actually play significant minutes. And I know Dave M is like a father, and he's just really proud to see, his guy, succeed with the Moose and then get called up for the Jets and play really well, right? So I think that's a consideration, because even though the Jets schedule has been a little bit easier, right, playing like the Chicagos of the world, it's not going to be so easy when you start playing the Bostons and the Vegas Golden Knights of the world, right? So it's going to be a little bit interesting to see, but we've seen that the Jets, even if you have 2 or 3 injured forwards, the Jets have kept chugging along, or you have a defenseman out of the lineup, they keep chugging along. So I'm not worried about it, but it is going to be a little bit interesting to see, who they call up for the Moose to replace Manalainen.
Well, let's talk about tomorrow's game against the Washington Capitals, Ezzy. I mean, the Capitals are a team that is, we talk about the injury bug. This is a team that's been
very average so far, Drew.
Well, because, they're very average. You take out Nicholas Backstrom from their lineup, and it's questionable as he's going to return. Although he was skating yesterday, I saw. You take out Tom Wilson from the lineup. He hasn't played yet.
Both of those guys have not played a game this year.
Right. They've been injured since off-season surgery. They're getting closer to returning. They were both skating today. We'll talk to Samantha Pell about it in the next 10 minutes to see if there's a possibility that they're in the lineup tomorrow. I wouldn't expect it, but they're getting for Washington. And the Caps have just been a team that's sort of trying to sort of just keep their head above water until they get those guys back in their lineup. Like the Caps,
Dmitry Orlov Drew's another guy that's been
veteran-laden team. This is an old team. They've been without Darcy Kemper, who was the offseason acquisition to shore up the goaltending situation. He's been out of the lineup day to day. I mean, you look at it, there are a lot of guys on this team, banged up guys that they thought were going to be key contributors. So
Connor
again,
Brown,
the Jets,
another guy. Sorry, Drew, I just keep jumping in here, but
yeah. That's okay. I mean, you're right. Carl Hagelin, Connor Brown. I mean, again, there are lots of veteran guys on this team. Caps are certainly a veteran, a veteran group. But you take a lot of those key players out of their team, and they're not the same team, which explains why they've been very middle so far this year. Now they get those guys back, and then you might see a Washington Capitals team return to a playoff spot. But right now they've been struggling, and the Jets need to take advantage of that when they play them tomorrow. The Jets, I know, look, injuries are a reality. We've talked about injuries a lot. The Jets have injuries. Other teams have injuries. The Jets have done a good job in when they've caught teams that have been banged up. They've done a good job in sort of taking advantage of a weaker opponent so far this year. And that's got to be sort of the similar mindset tomorrow. I mean, there's still a lot of talent on this Washington Capitals team. Don't get me wrong. You still got Kuznetsov. You still got Ovechkin, which means you still got some pretty damn good players that you have to game plan for.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned Ovechkin, and he, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I saw it was 796 because he scored 2 empty net goals yesterday versus Seattle, right? So 796. Who's at 801 again, guys?
A guy named Gordie Howe.
Yeah, guy we talked about on the postgame show. So I mean, even though Washington needs to win this game, as Drew said, because Washington right now is battling for their playoff lives, right? Like they're in the wild card conversation. They're not a team that's up there with certainly the Devils or the Islanders in the Metro Division, right? But this is a huge storyline, and to me, like whenever you have Alex Ovechkin, because he's towards the end of his career, we don't know how many years he has left. I mean, he's definitely probably got at least 4 or 5 years left. The way he keeps himself in shape and stays healthy, it's remarkable. We've talked about that many times before, right, Dave? How few games he's missed in his NHL career. But
yeah,
you're going to be able to say, if you're a Jets fan at that game tomorrow, you're going to be able to say, I saw goals 797, 798. Like that's the conversation we're getting into, right? Like I doubt he's going to break Gordie Howe's record tomorrow, but that would be really good for us boys on the post-game show. But, it's just incredible. And you're right, Drew. I mean, look at Nicholas Backstrom and Tom Wilson. You're talking about 2 top 6 guys there, right? Like Evgeny Kuznetsov is their number 1 center now, but Backstrom's their number 2 center. And you're talking about Dmitry Orlov, who hasn't missed as much time as Backstrom or Wilson, but you're talking about a lot of injuries here. We mentioned Charlie Lindgren earlier. He's won his last 2 starts. He's been really good. They signed him to a 3-year contract. Like the Capitals goaltenders are completely different than they were last year, right? Like they don't Vitek Vanacek don't want to rub salt in the wounds, right? But he's playing so well for New Jersey after not really, I guess reaching his potential with the Capitals, right, Dave? So there's no doubt that this Capitals team, similar to kind of Colorado with the amount of injuries they have right now, I mean, this is a good opportunity for the Jets, to continue their winning streak. But you're never going to count out the Capitals. Whenever you've got, Ovechkin and Kuznetsov and Oshie and, Lars Eller is still a player I really like. You're never going to take them lightly. But there's no doubt that this is not the same Capitals team as they are when they've got, Backstrom, Wilson, and Orlov.
Well, and you know what, Ezzy, the one thing that I think the Jets have done a very good job of doing this year is not taking their opponents lightly. And whether it's a really good opponent or whether it's a poor opponent, I think the Jets they've respected their opponent. And I think that's what we haven't seen from this Jets team enough of in the past, because they always knew they had the talent to kind of beat these teams, and whether it necessitated a comeback in the third period or they would score all their goals early and just kind of, hold a lead. That's what this Jets team did sometimes against lesser opponents. And right now, based on the Jets winning percentage, most teams are lesser opponents to them. But I like the way Rick Bowness is approaching it. He said, he's not denying that the standings are important, which is, reality, but oftentimes denied by coaching staff, players. But I also think what he's doing is he's maintaining the focus. If you talk to him about looking ahead to Vegas or looking ahead to Nashville, they're not thinking about that. I'm not saying they're not doing their pre-scouts and their requirements, but they are focused 100% on the Washington Capitals and the task at hand. And I think that's one of the changes we're seeing from this Jets club, is that they're not looking past opponents. It's not, they're not saying, well, this team, Chicago, we're already focused on Washington. No, they're focused on Chicago. They knew that they had to do what they had to do, and they were able to do it last night in a game where, you have some difficult, again, pros and cons. 5 defensemen, the defensemen love the extra minutes, but again, on a back-to-back, that's a little bit more difficult because guys obviously played, and it was a heavier game against St. Louis Blues. So I think that's one of the things that we've seen from this Jets club really this year, more than we ever have before, is the idea that they focus on the task at hand and they don't take their opponents lightly. And I think, again, regardless of whether you want to see the Jets are elite or whether you want to see the Jets are a very good hockey team, what they're doing is they're maintaining this focus and this level of play. And so we'll see. Look, Connor Hellebuck's going to be back in the net, as we most of us expect, tomorrow against Washington. And you're going to see a Jets team that's very focused on the Capitals and starting off their homestand, on the right foot.
Yeah, exactly right. The Jets and the Washington Capitals tomorrow, 6 o'clock, and then post-game 8:45 back here on our YouTube channel to see how the Jets perform in the first game of the 3-game homestand, with Vegas and Nashville coming to town on Tuesday and Thursday as well. We go to break and bring in Samantha Pell of the Washington Post for more on tomorrow's opponent, the Washington Capitals. It's the bottom of hour number 2 rapidly approaching. Don't go anywhere. It's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hi, Ez. A strange question for you. But why are you lying on the ground being crushed by a piano?
Well, Drew, I definitely tried to carry this baby grand piano down the stairs by myself, and somehow I failed miserably.
Right. Yeah. Sorry, that was a silly question on my part. My apologies. Would you like me to call Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage to help you move the piano? They are the most experienced piano moving company in Winnipeg, after all.
Yes, please call Rolly's and hurry. This piano is very, very heavy.
Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage offers stress-free residential moving services while taking great care of your personal belongings, including your piano. At Rolly's, no job is too big or too small. For more information, visit rollys.com.
Hi, it's Drew from Illegal Curve here. Selling your home can be stressful, but it wasn't for me. Thanks to my friends at Zappia Group Realty, they made the process so easy. My home sold within 48 hours and with multiple offers. Zappia Group Realty took care of everything with their exquisite customer service and attention to detail. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, get started by talking to Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Online at zappiagroup.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go...
We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs from restorative to cosmetic dentistry and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal, starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
Mindell, Dave, Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg with you here talking about the Winnipeg Jets. The Jets next in action, of course, tomorrow evening, facing off against the Washington Capitals. And from the Washington Post, we're pleased to welcome to the program for the latest on the Capitals, Samantha Pell. Samantha, good morning. How are you? Thanks so much for joining us.
Of course, I'm good. How are you guys?
We're doing great. We're
good.
Plugging along, getting ready to talk about the Jets and the Caps tomorrow. The only meeting in the regular season here in Winnipeg at the very least. And then they'll face each other again just before Christmas in the U.S. nation's capital. You know, Samantha, we were talking about it in the previous segment. This Capitals team is not itself yet, because largely due to the offseason injuries to Nicholas Backstrom, to Tom Wilson. Neither of them have played a game yet this year. So you look at the Capitals' record, and they're lower in the standings than typically we're used to seeing them. But how much of that is this team sort of just trying to sort of tread water and hold on until they get those two key forwards back in the lineup? How much of the early season struggles have been due to the absences of Wilson and Backstrom particularly?
Yeah, I think it's been a really big struggle. I think even GM Brian McClellan said the other day when the team was kind of on their 2-week big long road trip that this team is honestly just trying to tread water until they get guys and they get bodies back. And, we talk about Backstrom and Wilson, but also Dmitry Orlov has been hurt now for almost a month. And his injury was a day-to-day thing, and now it's turned into weeks and I don't know, maybe even months. And so for the Capitals, it really is a lot of injuries, but also they've hurt themselves in a lot of games that they should have won. It seems like they've had games in hand, and then all of a sudden they kind of go and they lose it in the third period. They're not very strong when it comes to tight structures late in games, which Brian McClellan even said itself. Offensively, they've sort of tried to pick it up in the last 3 games. They're on a 3-game winning streak headed in to face the Jets. But really, that third goal has been a huge struggle this season for the Capitals. And it just seems like now they're trying to finally click and put it together.
Samantha, I feel like we could probably just ask you for a long injury update with all of the injuries the Capitals have, because, like we were talking about it right before you came on, right? And talking about Connor Brown, who I believe only played 4 games. Like he was a big acquisition for the Capitals. And, Darcy Kemper we have to touch on, because I believe there's a good chance that it's Charlie Lindgren that starts tomorrow, right? And I guess I'll ask you just about the goaltending in general, right? Because it's really weird. You have a situation where both goalies, you don't see that very often, right? And I think you'd agree, some people are a little bit surprised that Lindgren got a 3-year deal, but maybe not so surprised now the way he's playing, because he's been really good for the Capitals. But so is Darcy Kemper. And then you have Vitek Vanacek, who is he a Vezina candidate right now for the Devils? Like, he really has been not good and then you've got the other, one, of course, is Ilya Samsonov, who's been really good for the Leafs. So I'm not just listing goalies for you, Samantha, but just overall, what have you thought of the goaltending? And I guess, is there an update on Darcy Kemper? Because I think last time I checked, he was still listed as day-to-day.
Yeah, we'll start with the injury, I guess, update with Darcy. He's still upper body injury day to day. I'm not sure if he's actually traveling on the team's road trip to Winnipeg and Chicago. He's been around the team. It seems like he's been doing fine. But yeah, I'm not even actually sure if he's going to go on the trip. They were supposed to practice today and they didn't. So we'll see if he gets on the plane and see if he kind of shows up. But yeah, if Darcy, again, he's a day-to-day injury, but if that's a major thing, he did get hit in the head in that game against Calgary. And so he's had a history of concussions. He's had a history of head injuries and eye injuries in the postseason. So if it's anything like that, I think the Caps will probably want to take it pretty slow and just pretty precautionary. I mean, Darcy even took himself out of that game. He wasn't pulled by a spotter or anything like that. So whenever a player does that, I mean, you're assuming that's pretty serious and they want to take things slow. So for him, no update. I would assume Charlie Lindgren goes against Winnipeg. And if Darcy's on the trip, then maybe he kind of goes in and he just needs a couple more practices to really get going, and he plays in Chicago. But I would agree with you that Charlie's probably in net against the Jets. And yeah, I mean, the rest of their injuries, I feel like are pretty long. You talked about Connor Brown, Orlov. They lost another defenseman last night, Alex Ovechkin. He's a rookie. He got hit in the head with an illegal check. And so for him, we don't know where things stand as well. He might be out for a long time. He might not. But it just seems like every night the Capitals keep on having injuries. Martin Ferravari, another defenseman, got hurt in Calgary. He's out for possibly weeks with an arm shoulder injury. So, yeah, it seems like it's never ending for the Capitals. I'm not sure when it's going to actually hold up and go back to normal. But even timelines with Backstrom and Wilson are still very much up in the air.
It's like a competition between the Avalanche and the Capitals. Who can rack up more injuries, right? Like, it's insane.
It seems like it.
Well, Samantha, we have to ask you about 37-year-old Alex Ovechkin, because it's just unbelievable that this guy just continues to produce year after year. He's like ageless right now. And obviously he's on a quest to pass Gordie Howe and then catch Wayne Gretzky. But what are you seeing from Alex Ovechkin this season? And has this become a significant storyline? Do the players talk about, his chase for these records?
Yeah, I feel like ever since I covered the Capitals, this is now my 4th season, I feel like we've talked about Ovi and records and milestones. And I think the first year it was, like Gretzky, maybe it could be a thing, maybe not. Like, we'll see how it goes. Then he goes out and he puts up 50 goal seasons time and time again. And now here we are saying, okay, he's only 98 away from Gretzky. He's only, 6 goals away from passing Gordie Howe. So for him, it seems like whenever anyone starts to doubt him, he just turns it up, and he scored 3 goals in his last 2 games. I understand they are empty netters, but they do count for the end totals. And for him, I think he's getting smarter about choosing his spots. He isn't the spry rookie who's going out running players left and right. And, he can't really do some of those open ice moves from his youth, but he does still kind of break those out from time to time. You do see him hustling on a back check. Like, he's become, I think, the overall player that a lot of people knew he kind of could be. And I think he's just kind of showing it at different times for the Caps this season. And I mean, he was asked about it when we were on our road trip in Canada. Is it tough when the team is losing and you're trying to catch all these records and it's like a struggle of individual versus team? And he honestly was like, I don't see it like that. I see it as we're trying to win hockey games. And if I score, then we're probably going to be winning hockey games. So I think for the team and for Alex's mindset, it's, we're going to go out, we're going to try to win. And Alex is probably going to pot some goals along the way. But I think for him, he's going to do this as long as he loves the game. And right now he absolutely loves the game.
Samantha Pell of the Washington Post is our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show Saturday morning. We're live on YouTube and all of our social media platforms. The Jets and the Capitals tomorrow night, post-game show, 8:45 back here on the Fine Channel. Samantha, let me ask you about, the forward group. And this is a forward group without Wilson and without Backstrom, as we've talked about. It's probably got to be the most veteran-laden forward group in the entire NHL. This is not a young team. Where is the next generation of Capitals sort of youth up front? Because this is, I'm trying to think who would qualify as young among these forwards, because there really aren't anybody that you would think of as sort of a young up-and-comer. These are all well-established veteran players, largely in some cases on the back ends of their career.
Yeah, I would say even, the middle tier of young guys, I would put Tom Wilson in that group. It's Dylan Strome, who the Capitals got in the offseason, who honestly is kind of jump-started Alex's kind of rebirth and his kind of runs. I mean, they've put Strome with Ovi for the last couple weeks, and he's really, really helped Alex's game and just giving him the puck and giving him an option there at center to really work with. So I would say that's kind of like the middle tier. And the really, really young guys, Alexei Protas is honestly the only young one in that top group. And he was kind of put in a top 6 role early. He's a huge, huge guy. But he's up playing on the 4th line right now. And so that's really the only young forward guy they have. They had Connor McMichael earlier in the season, but there really wasn't a place for him. The team sees Connor, he was a former first-round pick, as honestly a true center. And putting him at wing, they've tried time and time again, and it just doesn't seem to click. So yeah, I think it is going to be maybe a challenge moving forward of, when Alex and Backstrom and TJ Oshie, who we haven't even talked about, when these guys kind of move on, there's going to be a lot of holes to fill. And I'm not sure, honestly, as of right now, if the Capitals have the bodies to kind of fill them in the talent as well.
Samantha, just a few more questions for you. And I was kind of just thinking, as you were in your answer there, I was thinking, is Samantha going to mention Sonny Milano? Because that's who I want to ask her about.
Yeah, but, that's true. I did think about Sonny. Yes.
Yeah, well, and the thing is, that kind of goes with the kind of, middle age guys, I guess, if you want to call that for hockey players, right? 26. Yeah, I'm 40, so he's a young man compared to me, but Sonny Milano is a guy that they signed late, the Capitals, and Brian McClellan. I agree. Dylan Strome, I think that was a really good signing. And Strome's obviously a guy who was on a pretty bad team last year, but this is a former 3rd overall pick from back in the 2005, the Connor McDavid draft, right? When the Jets took Connor 17th overall. But I wanted to just ask you the type of impact Milano's had, because he was a guy, again, who a lot of Jets fans were hoping the Jets would pick up, before they went on this incredible run and kind of ran it back with the same group as last year. But what are your impressions of Milano so far this year?
Yeah, I was a very big advocate for Milano. I think early in the season when the Caps were kind of having their downturn and they picked up Milano, and all of a sudden you need bodies. And I think a lot of people in the press room were saying, why isn't Sonny Milano up on this main group? Like, he could play way better than some of these other guys that are up here. Give him a shot. He's an NHLer. He knows what he's doing. A lot of people, I was honestly shocked that he was still available at that point. That Calgary, I mean, obviously he didn't show well in training camp and the preseason, but it's very interesting that he was kind of just still out there waiting for a team. And so when Brian McClellan finally made the move, got him, and Laviolette decided to bring him up, I think he's been a really, really great fit for this group. I think there was a lot of questions maybe about his, I wouldn't say professionalism, but just the way that he is and the way that he plays. And I think the Caps have picked up a good one. I think Milano just fits in well, especially on this second line that he's been on with the TJ Oshie and Evgeny Kuznetsov. They're all three very creative offensive guys and maybe a little bit of a defensive liability, but you do rely on them on the offensive end. So I do think he's fit in well. He's been creative when needed. Obviously, he's probably still needs to work on his 200-foot game, but you do see the effort. You do see the want to have it. So I think it's worked out well, and we'll see as kind of the season goes on and bodies come back into the lineup. I think that's when things are going to be interesting, is when you have if you have a healthy Nicholas Backstrom, Tom Wilson, are these other guys going to get suddenly pushed out?
Samantha, one of the biggest things for teams is obviously being able to draw on your farm club, and the Hershey Bears are a top team in the Atlantic right now. So is there that kind of, I know Drew asked about younger guys on the team, but is there that next wave in Washington, those guys who are maybe close to taking that next step for this Caps team, or guys who maybe are ready to take that step right now?
Yeah, I would say I'd still put Connor McMichael, even though he's been up here. He's now back down in Hershey and he's doing well. I'd put him in that group. I'd put Hendrix Lapierre, who was kind of a shining star early last season and had his little run, and then people got healthy. He moved back down, and here we go. But those two guys, I would say, are kind of the up-and-comers. And then on the defensive side, I mean, Bobby Nardella is another guy the Caps are really happy about. Vincent Iorio was a draft pick that they've been very happy about. He stuck around during training camp for quite some time and got shifts in with Orlov, who praised him. Nick Jensen really liked him as well. So I feel like there are a couple of guys that are on the up and coming, but I think the big thing with the Capitals organization, it has always been their depth, and do they actually have guys? And they lost a couple guys to waivers early on in the season when they had to make cuts. So really, I guess to answer your question, there are some, but I wouldn't say it's a plethora of, okay, they can have their pick of young guys coming up.
Samantha, here's a really, hold on. I was going to say, here's a really random fact for you before we let you go. One of our really close friends is currently renting Hershey Bears captain Dylan McElrath's house here in Winnipeg. So a little bit random. Our friend they were misplaced. He and their daughter, they were misplaced. So they're currently renting Dylan McElrath's house. So just a little bit of a random Hershey Bears fact for you there.
And displaced, not misplaced, but okay.
Yeah, displaced. They weren't misplaced. Your brain may have been misplaced. Displaced is the word you're looking for.
I was a little excited to tell Samantha about that.
Maybe their house was misplaced, Ezzy.
Yeah.
There we go.
Last question for you, Samantha. I was reading Elliot Friedman's column earlier this week. I don't know if you saw him speculate about the potential for an Anthony Mantha, Brock Besser swap, maybe two disappointing forwards, if you would use that word. I don't know if you would or wouldn't, but I guess sort of a two-part question. Do you see Brian McClellan doing anything to sort of shake up this team before they get Wilson and Backstrom back? And if so, do you think that Anthony Mantha, that there could be legs to that speculation? It's clear it was Elliot just speculating as opposed to saying that there's something percolating there. But do you think there's some legs to that idea that Anthony Mantha might not be long for the Washington Capitals?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Brian would do it if he felt like the trade was good for him specifically. And I think with Mantha, I mean, he even said it, I think it was about a week ago, Brian admitted, he's like, yeah, we need more from Mantha. Like, we need more from him. We are a different team when he's on, and he hasn't been on, honestly. It feels like in games sometimes you just miss him. Like, he's on the ice, but you don't see him. And obviously that's a huge problem for a team that's been struggling to score and struggling to kind of stay afloat when you're missing all these big guys, and you went out and you made a blockbuster trade for him, and now he's just kind of there and not really showing out. So I do think that, yeah, what Elliot said is probably true. If there could be some speculation there, I'm sure Brian has kind of done his due diligence. I'm sure he's poked around at some things, but he did say the other day that the Caps were not in a position to kind of go out and get another high-end guy because they're waiting for Wilson and Backstrom to come back and the salary cap. So there is obviously some wiggle room there, right? If your team all of a sudden starts to go down, things aren't looking good. Maybe you want to trade away some pieces. I mean, I would assume Lars Eller is also in this conversation of guys that maybe are speculated to move and do something like that. But as of right now, the Caps are playing like they have 2 big guys coming back, so they can't go out and do anything else. But I do think the next 3 weeks, probably right before Christmas, New Year's, is when we're going to get a really, really good idea of who this Caps team is. And if it's not looking good, then I would not be surprised at all if there's a major move.
Samantha Pell covers the Washington Capitals for the Washington Post. Great insight and analysis as always, Samantha. Thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate your time this morning. We'll let you get on with your weekend.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys. Looking forward to getting on a plane to Winnipeg soon.
It's actually really nice, Samantha. It was like I don't know if you were following the weather. Like I like to do that, when I'm about to go somewhere. Earlier this week, it was the equivalent, I think, of minus 40 Celsius. Now it's like closer to minus 5 Celsius. Sorry, I don't know the conversion for Fahrenheit.
It's just around freezing, so it'll be low 30s.
Drew's wife is American, so he's legit. She's from Kentucky,
That's
so
right.
Drew's good with those Fahrenheit conversions.
High 20s.
So it was like negative for us. It was like negative 20 Fahrenheit when we left Edmonton. So
yes,
if it's anything better than that, then I am perfectly okay.
It'll be better than that. We'll see you in Winnipeg tomorrow night, Samantha. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much.
Take care. There she goes, Samantha Pell of the Washington Post, providing us with great insight into the Washington Capitals, one of our favorite guests here on the program. We don't talk a ton about the Caps, but when we do, it's always
they're an interesting team, Drew. Like because you know how we talked about how the Jets have persevered despite the injuries to Ehlers and Appleton and some other players.
Yeah.
Like when you think about Backstrom and Orlov and Tom Wilson and Connor Brown, you guys remember like Leafs fans were not happy when Connor Brown wasn't he dealt to Ottawa, if I'm not mistaken? He went to Ottawa. I forget if he signed with Ottawa or was traded. But the point is, like, these are key players. Darcy Kemper, another key player, even though it sounds like he'll be back pretty soon. But the Capitals are a team that I would not count out. Like, they're not a team. They're usually a playoff team. And I think the same thing goes for like a team like the Pittsburgh Penguins. I forget if they're in a playoff spot right now, but
they're not.
The Capitals
the Penguins are. The Penguins are now tied. Yeah, they're
in a wild card spot, right?
They're actually not. They're third. Everyone in the Metropolitan besides New Jersey is struggling this year. So New Jersey's got 9-point lead on second place, Carolina and Pittsburgh. They're both at 34 points.
After Carolina, it's pretty wide open.
Well, yeah, then you got the Islanders and the Rangers. They're right there. So it's a bit of a dog's breakfast in the Metropolitan. And Washington, I mean, look, I'm sure that they know in their dressing room that they need to just stay within, a puncher's chance. And then when you get healthy, there's still I think they're a very old team. I don't think it's very many years until they're going to become similar to what the Chicago Blackhawks are right now, when finally they have to sort of pull the pin on this iteration of the Washington Capitals. And then they're going to be in a deep rebuilding situation. But they are so veteran laden that you would have to assume that once everybody's healthy, they're going to go on a run and they're going to get back into a playoff spot. Are they among the elite in the East? There's that word again. I don't think so. But you never know with a guy like Darcy Kemper, who obviously knows how to win a Stanley Cup. And this group with the Capitals knows how to win a Stanley Cup. And so that you can coalesce around that when it comes to getting closer to playoff time. They know how to win come playoff time.
As long as you've got Ovechkin and Backstrom and Kuznetsov and John Carlson and TJ Oshie, and yes, you're right, Drew. This is not a young team by any stretch of the imagination, but as long as you've got players like that and, good goaltending with Kemper and Charlie Lindgren. We talked about Lindgren a little bit earlier, but I love the Lindgren story, Dave, because as you know, he's been a guy who was not drafted, and he was a guy who was always kind of up and down between the AHL and the NHL with the Canadians, right? So, and I was talking to Dave about that during the break. Like his numbers with the Springfield Thunderbirds last year were incredible, like something like 24-7-1 with a .925 save percentage. And his numbers for the Capitals have been really good in relief of Darcy Kemper, right? So, for Jets fans, for tomorrow's game, like Lindgren is not a slouch. Lindgren is a really good pro goalie. Obviously, he's not anywhere, close to the level of Connor Hellebuck, but, he's a good goalie. So it's not going to be an easy matchup tomorrow, but there's no doubt that without, Backstrom and Wilson and Orlov and all these guys, Connor Brown, I mean, the Jets are getting a Capitals team that is significantly weakened right now.
No question about it. You would maybe even say that they've been misplaced. rather than
that was a
display.
bad one. I just had to get that in there, right? That I mean, that's such a funny story. Shout out to Aaron, who's currently Aaron and Alana and their daughter Junie, who are currently living in Dylan McElrath's house in St. Vital. It's pretty funny. I think actually at one point they asked Dylan if he wanted to come on the show with us, and I said, "Okay, we'll have Dylan McElrath on the show, but I have to do the show from his house." Like that would just make it perfect, right? It's a really nice house, by the way.
Could you imagine he logs on and he sees Ezzy lying in his bed?
And he's just has like, no clue about it. What is going on?
I think actually Drew, he said he would come on too. They asked him, they texted him, and he said, "Yeah, anytime." He likes doing media.
That would be funny. If you did the show from if you just all of a sudden were doing the show from his kitchen table, that would be very, very funny. All right, we got 10 minutes to go before we wrap it up, and I don't have to talk to you bozos, for at least a good, almost 36 hours. Not quite 36 hours, more like 32 hours. And then we have to touch on it because we haven't done it yet. Dave M has been champing at the bit.
Put on your antlers. It's time for the Minuk Moose Minute on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
I'll be honest with you. I got really nothing. I mean, the Moose got pumped yesterday. I mean, what do you want me to do? I have to talk about a 7-0 loss, especially. I mean, guys, it's hard when we're, obviously when there's a Jets game and a Moose game. As I was joking with the folks in the chat yesterday during the Jets game, I said it's a little bit hard to have the Jets game on, the Moose game on, tweeting the Jets game, tweeting the Moose game, doing it all, updating the website, talking to everybody in the chat. I mean, I am just one man, even if I am try and consider myself to be a superhuman man. Sometimes it is a little difficult. So obviously yesterday in the
Dave, let me put it to you this way. If you don't talk about the Moose, we have to talk about Ginsburg's vasectomy. So you might want to fill some time here for at least a couple minutes.
Well, that's a fair point. I'll do my best. And look, I think it's one of those situations where we'll see what happens with the lineup tonight, whether Ville Heinola is healthy and ready to go back in. And again, we're not expecting Cole Meyer or Chaz Lucius to return the lineup at least this weekend. They'll be into Calgary after Abbotsford. They go to Calgary technically for the first time to play the Wranglers. Again, obviously they did that in the All Canadian season during the COVID year, so we know that they've done that before. But this is for the new Wranglers franchise. This will be the first time that they go to Calgary to play them, and that's I think they're playing it's midweek games. I think it's maybe Tuesday, Wednesday. I don't know. I have to look. But like the Jets, I just only focus on the games at hand, boys. I don't look down the schedule. That's a lie, actually. I do, but I just forgot. But anyways, so the question is, Brad Lambert, is he healthy? Obviously, he returned to the lineup after that big hit. And Leighton Janis, who's I think Leighton win something? A tough took maybe? I don't know. I feel like Leighton's maybe won something. But regardless, it's funny actually because someone messaged me on the Illegal Curve Instagram, and he's like, "Hey, I'm at the Moose Canucks game. Do you want me to send you pictures?" Which people do, and I always appreciate when they do that. And the best part was he messaged us at like 6, and I didn't see the message till like about 11 o'clock. And I wrote him back, and I was like, "Well, I don't think that there would be very many photos that are going to be worth sending or anything that you really want to highlight from last night's game. That is an instance where the Moose are going to want to burn the tape."
They could have sent us some pictures of like the food on the concourse or something like that. Just let us know like what's happening out in Abbotsford.
Well, especially after my Twinkie unique code word for the folks who didn't pay attention to the post-game show. If you do want to add some points to your standings bank to enter the contest to win authentic Jets merch from Illegal Curve Hockey, there you go. That's the unique code word. Twinkie, I've not changed it. But just for the record, because I did have someone message saying it's no longer the St. Louis Bread Company was no longer working. Usually I change it, within 24 hours. Obviously, if it's a back-to-back, it's a little bit longer. So you have a limited time to get that unique code word into the contest to get your points. So remember, Twinkie is the code word, as he'll be purchasing those when he leaves my house in about 5 minutes. So remember, Twinkie is the code word if you want to win merch from the Illegal Curve contest. So the Moose are back in action tonight. They'll be taking on the Canucks, looking for a better effort. We'll see what kind of bounce back they have. And again, one of the things it'll be interesting to see, one, if the Jets if there's anybody missing from the lineup, meaning is a Kevin Stenlin, a Jeff Malott, is a Alex Limoges not playing? I don't think so. I think you let them play, and because you can recall any of those guys, or Dom Tonnato. We'll see if any of those guys are missing from the lineup tonight. And then, of course, you expect this Moose team to have, a little bit of pride. I mean, they were a good team in the Central. I think they're third right now in the Central, and you don't
want to have an effort like that and not be able to bounce back. And one thing from this Moose team, boys, that we've seen consistently throughout the course of the season is that when they lose that first game, they've been very good at bouncing back in the second game of a series and winning it. So we'll see. We'll expect that. And then, of course, the Ice are concluding their home. They've got a 4-game homestand. I think they're playing Prince Albert tonight. In
That's
Winnipeg.
right.
So
Yep.
you've got the
They won
Ice in action.
6-3 last night, Dave.
Yeah, against Spokane. That was their teddy bear toss night in conjunction with the Children's Hospital. So that's a good cause for the Winnipeg.
They do
Ice.
such a great job with the community. Got to give a huge props to the Ice. Like they had Connor Geeky and Zach Benson, showing up at practices around the city. So, huge shout out to the Ice organization, the players, the management, everything.
It's sort of a shame that tomorrow's Jets Capitals game is at the same time as the Ice Pats game, because Connor Bedard in town tomorrow, and I think it might be the last time that he's in town. And so I think a lot of people would like to go see him, and I'm sure there's going to be a significant number of people who are going to go see him tomorrow night play, because I mean he's just so fantastic to watch. But it is sort of unfortunate timing that both games are happening relatively simultaneously tomorrow night, and I guess you could do both, but there's not a big window of time. I think there's maybe I think the Ice start at 5 and the Jets start at 6 tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it's a little bit tight, but also Connor Bedard is going to head to Halifax, right, for the World Juniors. And speaking of Ice, we're going to find out if Carson Lambos is going to make the team, because he's at selection camp right now. I imagine Carson Lambos is going to make the team because he was on the team last year. And should also give a shout out to Tyler Brennan, good Winnipeg boy, playing for the Prince George Cougars goaltender, former Team Manitoba alumni. Got to get that in there because I work at Hockey Manitoba. But wanted to mention one other thing, because we were talking about the Moose and talking about the Ice, talking about the Jets. I think when you're talking about like this game coming up here, it's interesting because the Jets are coming back home feeling really good, and you're going to face a really motivated Capitals team who picked up a big win yesterday. But I think it's just really remarkable that the Jets continue to win, even though they get 1 injury, 2 injury on this road trip, to add to the 3 or 4 injuries that they already have, right? So this Capitals game to me is just going to be interesting, and always interesting just because Alex Ovechkin's in town, and he's hopefully going to get a goal and get a little bit closer to Gordie Howe's goal total.
I'm fine if he doesn't. It doesn't really impress me one way or the other. I saw a lot of chatter in the chat about Ovechkin and Putin, and I can't separate the two of them. I agree. I don't really want to get it political here, but I'm fine if Ovechkin never scores again, as far as I'm concerned. There's certain lines in the world you can't cross. He's crossed those lines. Last thing before we wrap up this Saturday show, how quickly do you think Dan Robertson was trying to get back to Montreal, having to do the interview with Jesse yesterday?
Oh man, I'm glad you brought that up. Love it. That was so funny, and I saw a few comments about Jesse's girlfriend and everything like that. I mean, we just love it. I mean, good friend of the show, right? He's come on the show a bunch of times.
Former intern,
right? So yeah, that was so much fun. Good on Dan. That was a great interview. Jesse had. I don't think the smile on Jesse's face changed at all during that whole interview. Frozen. Texting a few people during that. During that spot on TSN, but that was great.
I think I was doing something and I came back to the TV just as Jesse was on there with Dan, and I'm like, what the hell just happened? Why is Jesse on TV right now?
Why is Jesse in Chicago?
Why is Jesse in Chicago? Good question to begin with. It's like, I'm very confused about everything that was going on there. Jesse's in Chicago. He's on TV. He's at the boards with the glass next to his girlfriend. I'm like, this guy's usually on with us yutzes. And all of a sudden he's sitting next to Dan in the broadcast booth. I do think, though, it's time that they get a 3-man booth. Dan, Kevin, and Jesse, I think, would be a great trio of broadcasters.
It's like the new three-headed monster, right? It used to be Paulie Edmonds, Dennis Bayak, and Brian Munns, right?
And well, now and us, we're also a 3-headed monster. I'm not sure 3-headed monster.
Something all right.
Something all right is exactly what it is, Dave M. Let's wrap up this Saturday morning. We obviously want to say a big thank you, Frosty Winnipeg. Where are you? Get the sponsors list up and on the screen. Want to say a big thank you to all the sponsors of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, the Illegal Curve Post Game Show, and of course illegalcurve.com. They make all of this happen. That's our friends at Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club, Linden Market Dental Center, Zappia Group Realty, Betway. They're the official title sponsor, of course, of the Illegal Curve post-game show. Who else do we have there? We have Tough Duck Boston Pizza, Seagram's, Rolly's Transfer, Grid Park, and The Keg. Support these fine businesses because of their continued support of Illegal Curve hockey. There you go. Thank you, Frosty. It's up on the screen there. We'll be back tomorrow night at 8:45. Give or take a couple minutes for the post-game show after the Jets and the Washington Capitals. We'll bring you all the latest on the Illegal Curve post-game show. Big thanks to everybody for joining us in the chat this morning. Always an entertaining crowd there. If you haven't already done so, smash the like button, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Leave us feedback both on our podcast page, on the YouTube channel, everywhere we are, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, the website.
Truth Social.
We're not there, but
TikTok.
whatever. We apparently are on
we
TikTok.
We are on TikTok now. Follow us on TikTok at Illegal Curve. We're heating up.
Yeah, don't actually expect us to ever post anything there, but you can follow us there.
No, we've been posting.
Have we?
Yeah, we posted. We posted
the Duck Call
guy. We have Duck Call guy up there, and Dave has a few Moose highlights. I think Dave might have posted something recently too. But yeah, follow us on TikTok if that's your thing. We're getting into this thing, guys. We're getting into this new thing called social media.
Yeah, we're getting into all the new social medias, just as they're probably on their way out of being the new social media.
Yeah.
In fact, we may be hiring an intern.
Well, when Drew created a Mastodon account, I'm like, okay, how deep into the dark web are we going to get here, boy? Obviously, I'm joking. That's not the dark web, but yeah, you got to join. The reality is, like, everybody's on TikTok nowadays, guys. Like, it's not going anywhere.
I'm not.
Well, I didn't mean literally everybody. I mean, you guys. I mean, you go on TikTok. It's great, Drew.
I'm sure it's lovely.
All the kids are doing it, man.
I'm sure all the cool kids don't want to have anything to do with me, and I don't want anything to do with the cool kids. I can assure you that.
I feel like Drew should just post like daily videos of him eating breakfast, and that would get lots of hits.
I'm done. See everybody tomorrow night, 8:45, the Illegal Curve post-game show. Have a great Saturday, everybody. For Dave Minuk, for Ezra Ginsburg, I'm your host, Drew Mindell. If it's Saturday, it's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, live on YouTube and all of our social media platforms.